Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today's video, a little bit of a risky video, because people view Wrath of the Lich King as the perfect masterpiece through very rose-tinted goggles. And actually today, I'm going to be talking about the things I'm not looking forward to in Wrath of the Lich King for when it does finally release, because it's definitely not a perfect expansion. I think it's a near-perfect expansion, but there are definitely some flaws, some made by the developers, some by the community. Remember guys that this is just the humble opinion of some nerd on the internet. It does not have to be taken seriously. Before we jump in guys, I have now sorted out memberships on the channel. If you don't know what it is, it's very similar to subbing to someone on Twitch. Basically it costs £5 or $6. You get early access to my videos, you get a little loyalty badge, and you do get credited on my end screens. Unfortunately guys, that is all I can really offer. I am really a one-man band here and I spend all of my time basically making the videos. But who knows, maybe in the future I can actually offer more rewards. But anyway, you'll find all the info to that in the description of the video, but let's move on to the actual video. So the first thing I want to talk about, the thing I'm absolutely dreading, is gear score. One thing I think many people have actually forgotten about. The fear of gear score was monumental for the average Wrath of the Lich King player. For those who didn't play Wrath, this is basically an add-on that would score your gear based on its item level, and then add all of that gear together and give you a character score, essentially, like a score that represents how powerful your character is. And once this add-on took on, every single group would demand a certain amount of gear score from the player before you could even join a pug, or even in some cases, guilds. This got much worse the longer Wrath went on for, because people would start to ask for more gear score possibly obtainable without doing the raid that person was trying to get into. So group makers would only invite people who have already done the raid, and by extent that would also include the disadvantage of the achievement system, because you would have to prove that you've done the raid with the achievement. And sometimes it was just really hard to get into pub groups. It is going to be much harder for you to do that than it has been in Classic and TBC Classic. When Wrath pops up, you can't just automatically presume you're going to get into a group. The gear score add-on was a very flawed system, because sometimes low gear score items would be better than higher gear score items at increasing your DPS or your, tanking ability. Plus warriors could dual wield two-handed weapons, which inflated their gear score. So it was, a very flawed add-on. And hopefully this add-on will not see the light of day when Wrath does launch, but it has been very prevalent on Wrath of the Lich King private servers. Now, second thing I'm not looking forward to is Wintergrasp. Now, hear me out here. I absolutely love Wintergrasp as a battleground, but it does have some potential problems. Let me quickly explain what Wintergrasp and VOA is all about. So VOA is a raid with mini-bosses inside it that drops tier gear and epic PvP gear, so obviously VOA runs are very desirable. The only issue is that you need to win the Wintergrasp battleground in order to unlock VOA, because it's actually a battle between the Horde and the Alliance on your server. The problem is many people will encounter on many servers is that one faction will always be better than the other. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes the Horde and the Alliance win Wintergrasp in a fairly balanced amount, but sometimes one faction just wins all the time, either because there's a small faction population on that server, or just simply there are better PvP players on that particular faction. I've played on servers that had a much smaller Alliance population, but Alliance always won Wintergrasp because they just had better players, and they also have a slight advantage because they have better PvP ratios. And this can be really bad because it means one faction never gets to go inside VOA. They need to make a change that increases the power of the opposite faction the more they lose in order to counteract this potential issue, because it's definitely going to be happening on many servers. A third big concern is swarms and swarms of Death Knights. This is even coming from a die-hard Death Knight player. I will be playing Death Knight and Wrath. But because of the ease of access to making a Death Knight alt with their level 55 start, while also being really fun to play and very overpowered, there's going to be a lot of Death Knight players when DKs launch. Hopefully they'll drop in the pre-patch as well, but what's going to happen is you're going to see a Hellfire Peninsula group with 4 Death Knights and 1 healer absolutely guaranteed. I mean, that's not much of an issue, it's to be expected, but long term, this will be problematic for the average Death Knight player because there's going to be so many of them, therefore it would be difficult for Death Knights to find guilds and put groups. This is never a problem on private servers, you may be thinking, but that's only because everyone has to start at level 1. It will be a problem on live servers because of the draw of making an alt that has a level 55 start. It really is just an easy alt to make. People probably will just quickly make a Death Knight for gold farming and stuff like that as well. They're also very overpowered in arena, so anyone who doesn't play a Death Knight is going to be in a world of pain for the whole of Wrath, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. And this will be my smug face.
It's time for the smug face.
Now, the fourth thing I'm not looking forward to is the long wait for Ulduar. I'm worried that Blizz will keep to the classic and classic TBC release schedule of content. Content is completed faster these days. It needs to be released faster. It makes no sense when the content is already been developed and they can release it whenever they want, but they choose to still stagnate the release of content. People are going to get very, very bored of Nax, OS and EOE. Firstly, because we've already done Nax, and Wrath of the Lich King Nax is just an easier version. Plus it's not that much of a great raid anyway. OS and EOE are just one boss raids. You know, they're not going to keep us busy for very, very long. We don't want a drastic population drop-off like TBC Classic. There's always going to be a big drop-off at the beginning of an expansion, but having to wait 4 to 6 months for Ulduar will just be a completely, fundamentally stupid idea. Wrath really doesn't start until Ulduar is released because it's one of the best raids of all time. Hopefully they will actually buff Nax and make it a bit more difficult because it really was a face roll raid and it's just not enough to keep people interested for multiple months of playing World of Warcraft. Sometimes the classic WoW boss mechanics deal as much damage as a Wrath of the Lich King version of the raid, just to put it in perspective for you. And now for my last point. It's a bit of a small one, but it is definitely a problem. Dalaran can be extremely laggy. Even back on the original Wrath of the Lich King, when the server population was less than it is now, and this is because there are 2 different factions in the same city, and the city isn't exactly big, it's actually quite a small crowded place. It doesn't matter how powerful your PC is because it will lag the server significantly. Shatterer is better because, you know, it's bigger and it's more spread out, but what Blizzard really need to do is they need to layer Dalaran properly, otherwise it's just going to be an extremely unpleasant place to be. I mean, it even was when we were all playing Legion, like, Legion Dalaran was really, really laggy, so they really need to figure out a way to fix that, because, you know, some of these servers have like 12,000 players on them now. Anyway guys, that's going to be the end of the video there. My name is MetaGoblin. To the next video, ciao.